The situation in Libya is about to explode. The social unrest has reached an astronomically high peak. Right now, Libya stands at about a 30% unemployment rate, which is much higher than most of the countries in the region. Even Egypt had between 18 and 20% unemployment. You combine this with the unrest that's been going on in the rest of the continent and with the fact that Gaddafi has ruled without question for 42 years, and you have the perfect recipe for a revolution. Mummar Gaddafi has responded to these protests by slaughtering the people of Libya. He has shown his true genocidal nature in defending the interests of the elite. But there is a good sign. Some of the military response he has ordered has not gone off as he had intended. Many military units have responded as they have been ordered. There have been reports of snipers on rooftops shooting at protesters in order to disperse them. There are also reports of helicopter gunships and tanks attacking protesters. Unarmed protesters showing exactly how much Gaddafi and his son are willing to kill in order to hold on to their illegitimate power. However, not all military units are doing as they are told. Recently, a military group was ordered to fire on protesters in Tripoli. When the military units refused to fire on the civilians, he called another military unit to come and do the same. And then there have been reports of the two military groups fighting each other. Also, two bombers defected from the Libyan state and landed in Maltese. They landed in Malta after they said they were ordered to bomb civilians. They refused to do so and defected to the other nation. There is even a new development. A Libyan military vessel has been seen in international waters, not flying a flag. This has left a lot of people wondering just exactly what it's doing there, and there's a lot of rumors that the military vessel is looking to defect to another country. A doctor spoke to Al Jazeera about conditions on the ground. It's a massacre here. The military is shooting at all protesters with live bullets. I've seen it happen with my own eyes. The military forces are everywhere, even from the hospital I work. We are not safe. There was an 8-year-old boy who died the other day from a gunshot to the head. What did he do to deserve this? Forces loyal to Gaddafi have been spotted in Tripoli firing on anti-government protesters, trying to keep the veteran leader in power. But a lot of people have said that these events didn't actually happen. The best we can hope for is to see some of these things in the news and get credible sources on them. This is what was said by the Wall Street Journal. Residents said pro-Gaddafi loyalists driving around in cars fired rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns at anyone in the streets. According to protesters, Gaddafi has brought in mercenaries to back up his regime. Witnesses say that these mercenaries were black and they did not speak English. In fact, they spoke only French, which leads me to believe that they're probably part of the French Foreign Legion, a notorious mercenary source for imperialist conquest and a general backup for any dictator who's willing to pay for them. But because the fact that they're black and they only speak French leads me to believe that they are probably French Foreign Legion. Many Western leaders have come forward condemning all the violence. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has said it's time to end all of this bloodshed. Most of the Western governments who have condemned this violence are kind of standing in a precarious position. Mummar Gaddafi has virtually no ability to produce his own weapons and ammunition. In fact, the most of it is bought from the UK and France. Now, UK Prime Minister David Cameron has already suspended weapons shipments to the North African nation. However, France has yet to follow suit. What I am happy to see is that the people of Libya have stood up and resisted Mummar Gaddafi. And they have done so violently by taking it to the streets and completely unafraid to defend themselves from the fascist military attacks that have been landed against them. The people of Libya are showing a hell of a lot of guts and a hell of a lot of bravery in fighting this murderous regime. The New York Times reported this. Young men arm themselves with chains around their knuckles, steel pipes and machetes. The police have retreated from some neighborhoods and protesters were seen armed with police batons, helmets and rifles commandeered from riot squads. The protesters set dumpsters on fire, blocking roads in some neighborhoods. In the early evening, the sound and smells of gunfire hung over the central city, and by midnight, looting had begun. According to the Wall Street Journal, there were numerous reports of protesters had seized weapons caches from abandoned government bases and had gone on the offensive against government barracks. The soldiers have fled and the citizens have taken their weapons, one resident of Benghazi said in a telephone interview. Citizens now have rocket-propelled grenades, Kalashnikovs, and hand grenades. I can hear the bullets now in RPGs, and people have been beeping their car horn in celebrations. This means the people of Libya are armed and ready to defend themselves. Meanwhile, Cuba and Venezuela have both come out with neutral statements, saying that they are unsure of exactly what is happening at the moment and are wanting to stand back and see exactly what's going on. Hugo Chavez has officially made a statement of neutrality, but has said that he wishes to see the bloodshed come to an end. However, former Cuban President Fidel Castro has said that he is expecting the U.S. to send NATO in to control the situation at just about any time. As the situation escalates in the African country, more and more imperialist powers are becoming more anxious about invading the region in order to stop the violence, which is probably expected by many people to occur at any time. An invasion of Libya on human rights grounds would more likely have a sinister profit motive, ulterior motive. Right now, the civil unrest has caused the price of oil to jump 6% per barrel. Right now, Libya exports about 1.6 million barrels of oil a day. The recent unrest by striking workers has reduced that amount by about 100,000. Now, this has caused the market price of oil to go up. And as we all know, the price of oil and oil itself has generally been a very good motivator for getting people to go to war. There's also a great deal of concern over energy matters in Europe. Right now, the largest purchaser of Libyan oil is Italy, who purchases 1/3 of all of its oil. Germany also purchases 10%. However, France has publicly said that they're not worried about continuing the oil shipments. They think everything is going to be okay on that front. The International Energy Association has said that the recent spike in oil prices of 6% per barrel has not been justified. In fact, the Saudi oil minister has already come out publicly and said that this increase in oil prices is not justified and that the situation has not gotten to that kind of a level. The International Energy Agency says they have enough reserves to stave off any immediate crisis. So the recent spike in oil prices have not been justified, according to both the International Energy Agency and the Saudi oil minister. In North America, however, the situation concerning Libyan oil is starting to look grim. Even though Europe does consume the vast majority of Libya's oil, the commodity speculators in the U.S. and particularly in Canada have been exacerbating the situation. Frequently, Canadian commodity speculators have seen the situation as a lot worse than American ones. On the Business News Network, BCMI research spokesman said that he expected oil pipelines to start being bombed in the near future. Now, he has no reason to believe this, although there is a possibility that such a thing might happen, although at this time it's not seen as something that might be possible. When you combine this with the over-exaggeration of some of the events, and the general panic around the commodities market, speculators have made the situation a lot worse, and a lot of this panic is over nothing. The situation in Libya is quite different from the situation in Egypt. With Egypt, a lot of the unrest was very peaceful and the violence was low. So basically the Western powers could still blame all the violence on the protesters by saying they're calling for peace from the protesters in this situation, although it was clearly coming from the government. However, with this situation from Mummar Gaddafi, who has been very, very forward in the fact that he is planning and is actively killing his own citizens in order to maintain his power, Western powers have been more on the case of backing the protesters against Mummar Gaddafi, even though thus far he's given the oil industry a lot of what they asked for, but not all of it. In this case, the U.S. powers might use NATO to go in and settle the situation. I mean this if it were to be a true humanitarian effort to stop the violence, but we know that's not NATO's role and that is not what they do. In the end, all we can do right now is sit back and watch the events unfold and try to learn some revolutionary lessons about uprisings in the Middle East and hope uprisings like these occur in other countries to build the freedom of other nations as well. What we can do is sit here and let these countries know, let the people of Libya, the people of Tunisia, of Egypt, of Yemen, and all the other places, let them know that we stand in solidarity with them, because their struggle for liberation is bound up with our own, and we can only get to true liberation by getting there together.